Hello, thanks for tuning in. Joe Zimhart here again. It's July 21st, 2023. I just got done visiting my mother. I see her often these days. She just turned 99 today, and she's doing okay, living by herself with my help and some visits to doctors. But for 99, doing quite well. I noticed she has this book out among her other reading materials, and she still reads with the help of lenses despite her macular degeneration. And the book is this one, Mushroom Satori, A Cult Diary, and the author is me, Joseph Zimhart. Now, I wrote this 10 years ago, and it was published by Aperture Press in Reading, Pennsylvania. They thought they'd take a chance on it. I'm a first-time author in terms of novels. And it sold a little bit. I didn't do well promoting it. But anyway, it's out there. And the topic of the novel is what I'd like to address here. And it's basically a composite of a couple of cases I had regarding young men that joined cults. This particular story is about a young man named Jake who in 1997 drops out of college, drops his Catholic religion after reading Nietzsche, and that's significant in this book. And he happens upon a new Zen commune in northern New Mexico, and he drives his Volkswagen Beetle up there and ends up trying out living at the commune run by this mysterious Zen master from Japan who is only known as the old man in the book, or sensei. What happens to him over 10 years is not what happened to me. Who was, I was only in a group for about a year and a half. So some people think this is an autobiographical statement. It's not. It is purely fiction. Now, what I start out here in a pre-introduction is a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche from Thus Spake Zarathustra. And the quote is, do you presume yourself to be free? If so, then I want you to tell me what is your ruling idea, and not that you have broken free of some fetter. Are you the kind of man who ought to be unfettered? For there are many who cast off their final value when they cast away their chains. So that's the theme of the book, where he reads Nietzsche, misunderstands him the way millions of young people do when they read Nietzsche, and perhaps the entire German nation did in a way, because Nietzsche's philosophy influenced Nazism in the end. A lot of soldiers were reading him. It wasn't the only thing. However, Nietzsche's very complicated. And so I look back into him again, and I have a few books. There's a lot of quotes by Nietzsche called The Hammer of the Gods is one of them. And it's a compilation of quotes from about 10 of his writings. So one of the things that he gets into here is about writing itself. And so we're going to take a quick look at what he says here. The question is, why do I write? And this comes from the Gay Science. Answer, I am not one of those people who sit thinking while holding an inky pen, and even less one of those people who give themselves over to their passions while sitting on a chair and staring at a piece of paper. My writing annoys me, and I am ashamed of it. For me, writing is an urgent and embarrassing need. And to talk about it, even in the form of a parable, disgusts me. B, so why do you write? Answer, to be quite honest with you, my friend, I have yet to discover any other way of getting rid of my thoughts. And then B asks again, but why do you want to get rid of them? Why do I want to? Do I want to? I have to. So Nietzsche is kind of what I call a clown of contradictions. He's a performer, a poet. He was not necessarily a serious philosopher in the sense of someone like Heidegger or Hegel. He was a person that attacked even something that he more or less felt good about. For instance, he's known as the person that declared the death of God and despised Christianity as a sick religion that made civilization sick, especially in the West. So here he says, I only attack when there is no question of any personal quarrel, when no backdrop of bad feeling exists. To me, attack is proof of a basic good will, or even gratitude. By associating my name with a cause or a person, whether for or against, I honor it. I am entitled to fight against Christianity because I have never suffered misfortunes from this particular quarter. All right. In fact, the most serious Christians have always been well disposed towards me. I am an enemy of Christianity de rigueur and am not going to blame individuals for the disease of millennia. All right, so that sounds almost contradictory. He likes the average Christian. They treated him well, and yet the malaise of Christianity he sees as somehow evil and diseased and it needs to be changed. And of course, his solution is to endorse what he called a Dionysian balance to life, which can be destructive. He didn't like war, but he felt war was a cleansing mechanism that strengthened a nation. He felt that the strong would survive and thus improve the species. And therefore, the Übermensch or the Overman or the stronger men would thrive and pursue life and guide the remaining people, who he called the herd, back into a better life. So he's, to me, a clown of contradictions. And you want to take him seriously? Well, he basically said, the only people that should take what I say seriously are people who deserve to take what I take seriously. Most of us are better off in our chains, which have value. And if we cast them off, we cast off our final value and we get lost because we cannot be a great man, as Nietzsche strived to be in his writing. Even he didn't achieve it, despite his arrogant claims about weak men and disease of mankind. He himself was a diseased person, probably suffering the effects of sexually transmitted disease toward the end of his life, which led to his insanity and his collapse. One of the things that happened to him just before he did collapse was, at least the legend goes, that he saw a carriage horse being whipped by its owner out on the streets, and he ran over there and intervened to help protect the horse, who was bleeding from the whipping. And he embraced this horse. He cried, he had empathy for it, and then he soon after collapsed and spent another decade, some period under the care of his sister, who was an anti-Semite, by the way, that came over to help him from South America and stayed with him until he died. Quite a tragic death, a kind of a heroic or anti-heroic life. He basically was a philosopher who helped to endorse what we call existentialism, along with Kierkegaard, Dostoevsky, Kafka, and a number of others, more moderns like Sartre and Camus. But Nietzsche was special, was quite different, and I think needs to be read carefully. In my novel, Mushroom Satori, not much is spoken about Nietzsche except in the beginning and when the protagonists girlfriend mentions, that he had seemed to have become brainwashed by reading Nietzsche, and then went on this search and decided that Buddhism was the way to go, because it wasn't necessarily religious. It was more of a practice and a kind of a psychological religion. The title Mushroom Satori, and I'm going to give away something here about the book. It's been out 10 years, so if you haven't read it, fine. But if you do read it, beware that this is a revelation that comes out in the middle of the book. But the protagonist's name is Jake Gzip. And Gzip is pronounced, or it's written like this. It's Polish. And the name means mushroom. Now, I found out about this because I had a client in Australia, a Polish couple whose last name was Gzip, and their daughter had joined a branch of the Hare Krishna, and they were concerned about it, and they asked me and my colleague to talk to her and see if we could help her re-examine her choice to belong to the Hare Krishna. So that's how I learned about the name, and I was always intrigued with it, so I incorporated it into this novel. And of course, Satori is Zen for enlightenment, or coming into enlightenment. And the book is subtitled The Cult Diary because before every chapter, there's kind of a segment of part of Jake's diary. Like, for instance, I just turned to this, the Sword of Wisdom in chapter 5. I'm quoting 4 June 2004. By the way, the time span here is 1997 to 2007. And it says, you hope to know what might come next. You did not see this coming. Sometimes the sword of wisdom cuts. It cuts deep into your sanity. So that's Jake writing in his novel. And of course, part of the problem in his cult experience over a 10-year period is that the leader, the old man, used the stick. It's a Zen stick like a paddle, which is traditionally was used to slap meditators on the back to bring them to awareness in the now, and help them maintain that presence of mind and consciousness, especially if they're falling asleep while meditating. So some of the Zen cults that I've studied had leaders or senseis which abused the members by slapping them quite viciously with this stick, like a paddle, and actually causing welts on their back and blood in some cases. So there can be an abusive side to Zen among some of the senseis, which do this to, quote, toughen up the meditator and to keep them awake. So that's also part of this book. In any case, I think that reading Nietzsche can be invigorating. I mean, it was for me. It's a challenging read, especially his practically bizarre, poetic Thus Spake Zarathustra that introduces us to a kind of a John the Baptist character who is helping other characters to grasp that there's this coming change, or Übermensch, or Zarathustra, a great wise man, and we should expect that to lead us into a kind of a new age. But in any case, I'm kind of promoting the novel. If you care to read it, please, you can purchase it online and Amazon. And thanks for listening, and happy birthday to my mom. Oh, by the way, there's something that Nietzsche says here that I'd like to point out about suicide. My mother at 99 has been saying often, people shouldn't live this long. I pray that God takes me. She's struggling, and that's not unusual for older people. But she's not depressed. She manages her day pretty well. She makes her bed, she does some cleaning, she's able to do minor cooking, and so forth. But she does need some assistance. Nietzsche has said things like, the idea of suicide is a powerful comfort, by means of it, one survives many a bad night. And he also says that Old Men in Death, he said, one may well ask why it is, apart from the dictates of religion, that it is more respectable for a man who is growing old and feeling his power slip away from him to sit and wait for his slow exhaustion and decomposition, rather than to put an end to his own life while in complete possession of all his faculties. So in a sense, he's promoting suicide in the sense of, for instance, if someone dishonors their tradition and the Japanese samurai culture, they would commit harikari and take their life in an honorable way. So Nietzsche's promoting that kind of heroic behavior. And yet everything in our medical tradition would say, hold on there, a person has a right to refuse treatment, but they don't have a right to commit suicide, and we try everything in our means to keep them happy and prevent them from doing that. Brings up a big question. Nietzsche covers it one way, my mother approaches it another way, the Catholic Church and the medical industry approaches it another way. I've already talked to hospice about my mother, they approach it another way. So there's many variations on this theme of death. And it also comes up in this book, and I'm going to give away something else because in order to honor the birthday of the sensei of the elder, the cult gets together toward the middle of this novel and has a birthday party for him. And of course he likes mushrooms, and this younger guy goes out to gather mushrooms in the mountains out there and finds what he thinks are these white delicious mushrooms or meadow mushrooms. But he inadvertently picks some which are the Amanita pantherina, which is a death cap or a highly poisonous toxic mushroom. And many of the cult members that ingested from that salad got sick. The old man, who was already suffering from alcoholism and a bad liver, ends up somehow succumbing to mushroom. So the mushroom plays in the novel with the protagonist's name and also as a turning point in the entire narrative. All right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening, and enjoy your day.